Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer and explore the totally fascinating biological processes that ensure life on Earth actually continues. Think about it. Whether we're talking about the tiniest microscopic fungi or complex human beings, every single organism has a definite lifespan. It's born, it grows, it matures, and eventually it dies. Today we're going to look at exactly how life bridges that gap through reproduction.
We've got a packed explainer today. We're covering 1. The big picture. 2. Asexual reproduction. 3. Sexual reproduction basics. 4. Plant reproduction. 5. Human reproduction. And finally, 6. Summary and exam review.
All right, part 1, the big picture.
Let's take a real-world look at how life surrounds us. Whether it's mushrooms popping up after the rain, a massive mango tree sprouting from a tiny seed, or a caterpillar completely transforming into a butterfly, the drive to create new life is literally everywhere. Because living things eventually die, there absolutely has to be a mechanism to replace them. Otherwise, an entire species would just vanish forever.
And that brings us to our big definition. Reproduction is simply the biological process where living beings produce new individuals of their own kind. It's the ultimate survival trick. Without this specific biological process, life on Earth as we know it would just stop.
Now, here's where we clear up a super common misconception. Organisms basically pull this off in 2 main ways. First up, asexual reproduction. This involves just one single parent creating offspring that are exact genetic copies, basically biological clones. Then you have sexual reproduction, which takes 2 parents. The offspring get a mix of traits, and this mixing is huge because over many generations, these little variations help living beings adapt to changing environments and can even create totally new species.
Moving on to Section 2, asexual reproduction.
So how do some living things reproduce totally solo? Well, a lot of plants don't even bother with seeds. They use something called vegetative propagation, meaning new plants just sprout right out from vegetative parts like stems or leaves. Think about a potato suddenly sprouting in your pantry. Farmers and scientists actually use artificial versions of this natural process. They'll cut a stem to plant it, graft a branch from one tree onto another's roots, bend flexible twigs into the dirt, which is layering, or even grow whole new plants from just a few cells in a tissue culture lab.
Okay, time for a quick mini quiz. Why would a farmer actively choose an asexual method, like cutting or grafting, instead of just planting seeds? Think about it for a sec. Well, if you want a whole orchard of apples that taste exactly the same, you go with asexual reproduction. Since it involves only one parent, every single plant is a genetic clone. It is literally the perfect agricultural strategy for growing a ton of high-quality crops consistently.
All right, Section 3, Sexual Reproduction Basics.
Now, nature has to solve a massive biological math problem here. Think about it. If a new baby got a full set of chromosomes from mom and a full set from dad, the chromosome count would double every single generation. The cells would be totally overloaded in no time. Biology fixes this with a really clever type of cell division called meiosis. Meiosis perfectly cuts the genetic material in half when making gametes, the sperm and egg cells. So, when those gametes eventually combine, the offspring gets back to the normal, stable number of chromosomes. Problem solved. To really picture how this works, your textbook uses a fantastic analogy. Imagine pairs of colored beads. Let's say one pair is light green and dark green, representing blonde or black hair. Another pair is light blue and dark blue, for straight or curly hair. During meiosis, these beads are randomly shuffled and sorted. It's like a giant genetic lottery. The shuffling creates thousands of unique combinations, and it hits the nail on the head as to why you might share some traits with your parents but look totally different from your siblings.
Let's dive into Section 4, plant reproduction. Let's take all that amazing genetic mixing and see how it works in the botanical world. Did you know a flower is actually a plant's reproductive organ? If we look closely at the inside, on the outside we've got the green sepals. They protect the flower when it's just a tiny bud. Then come the bright, colorful petals, which act like a giant billboard to attract insects. But the real magic, that happens right in the center, with the internal reproductive structures.
To keep this perfectly organized for your exams, you've got to know these parts. Here's a great memory trick. Look at the word stamen. It has the word men right in it, so it's the male part. The stamen has a filament and an anther, and the anther produces the pollen. The female part is the pistil. It's got a sticky stigma at the very top to catch pollen, a tube called the style, and a swollen base called the ovary, which holds the female gametes.
And here is where it gets absolutely wild. After fertilization, that ovary actually swells up and turns into the fruit we eat. Look at a tomato. Those little ovules inside the ovary, they become the seeds. So next time you're slicing a tomato for a sandwich, just remember you are actually looking at the matured reproductive ovary of a plant. Kind of crazy, right?
Time for another quick mini quiz to lock this in. What is the specific term for the process where pollen moves from the male anther over to the female stigma? If you shouted out pollination, you completely nailed it. That is exactly what bees and butterflies are up to when they're buzzing around your garden all day.
Moving on to Section 5, Human Reproduction.
All right, let's switch gears from plants to human biology. When we look at the cells involved, there is a massive difference, and we see this all across the animal kingdom. The male gamete, the sperm, is super small, highly active, and produced in the millions. The female gamete, the egg, is literally the complete opposite. It's much larger, very few are produced, usually just one a month in humans, and it doesn't swim at all. Instead, it is packed full of stored nutrients to support a potential new life.
For your exams, you absolutely need to know this exact sequence. Step 1 is ovulation, where the ovary releases an egg. Step 2, fertilization. This actually happens in the oviduct, also known as the fallopian tube. That's where the sperm successfully fuses with the egg to make a single cell called a zygote. Step 3, that zygote starts dividing as it travels down. And finally, step 4, implantation. The embryo attaches itself right into the thick, nutrient-rich inner lining of the uterus to begin the 9 months of pregnancy.
So, what actually determines the biological sex of a baby? Well, everybody has 2 sex chromosomes. Females are X and males are XY. Because the mother is XX, her egg will always, 100% of the time, provide an X chromosome, but the father, being XY, produces some sperm with an X and some with a Y. So it's actually the father's gamete that ultimately decides if the baby will be biologically female or male.
And finally, Section 6. Summary and exam review. We've covered a ton of ground today, so let's lock in those grades with some high-yield revision notes. Seriously, take a mental snapshot of this, or just pause the explainer and screenshot it. These are the absolute critical mechanics you need to memorize from this chapter. Asexual means identical clones, sexual means genetic variation through meiosis. Remember that flower anatomy? Stamen for male, pistil for female. And know the human sequence, from fertilization in the oviduct all the way to implantation in the uterus.
To wrap things up, I want to leave you with a provocative question straight from your textbook. A student claims, in humans, ovulation always happens on day 14 of the menstrual cycle. Is that correct? Well, think about the huge variations in human bodies, stress levels, nutrition, and overall health. Does biology ever really run on a perfectly rigid, robotic schedule? Consider how the environment might shift that timeline. It's a great reminder that while science gives us a blueprint, life is beautifully dynamic. Keep asking questions, keep studying those notes, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.